So based on what you just heard, assume we have a table called fortune cookies. It's got the column fortune text, and which of these instance methods of if fortune cookie inherits from active record, which of these will not return a silly fortune using the extremely mature trick of adding embed to the fortune text? So look those over for a moment. Initial vote. Let's do an initial vote. Initial vote. Initial vote is showing all 4 things. So this is good. OK, shall we do a second vote? Let's do the second vote. Second vote says, second vote is mostly converging on red, well, red, some yellow, some green, and some smartphones with indeterminate RGB color mappings. OK, let's go through the answers here. Let's see what's going on. So which of these will not correctly retrieve and concatenate embed onto the end of the fortune text attribute? Well, let's just do them in textual order here. What's happening here? Well, we're claiming to dereference an instance variable, but the whole point of active record is that you're not just talking about instance variables anymore. You're talking about attributes that have a representation in the database, right? So in this default case, fortune text will spring into existence as nil. It will not be the attribute that you thought it was, because the way active record manipulates its internal attribute state is not just by setting up simple Ruby instance variables. It actually has quite a bit of logic so that when those things get saved out to the database, a number of the right things will happen. So the orange choice will not work. It won't do what you expect. What about the green and the red choices? Well, if we start with the green one, if we said that these are instance methods of fortune cookie, well, that's fine, because that means that within an instance method of something, what is the value of self? It's just the object that received the message. So self.fortuneText is actually just an alias for fortune text all by itself, right? Fortune text is a method call. Remember, all getters are method calls. We just had to leave out, we left out the parens here. And yes, it's true. Some people have said, well, looking at the red example, it's not really obvious that fortune text is a method call as opposed to being a plain old simple variable. That's true, and you consider that a weakness of Ruby. Some people always put NP parentheses when it's a method call. But the way Ruby works is that if fortune text were a variable and it was a local variable that was in scope, that's the value that would get used. If there is no such local variable, it checks whether there's a method, and what you meant is a method invocation. So that's a potential ambiguity in the language. Some people conservatively code around it by always having the empty brackets after the method call. On the other hand, because fortune text really is, in real life, it's an attribute of a model, that argues that, well, you should notate it like an attribute. And attributes don't have parens after them. So it's a little bit a matter of taste. But syntactically, the choice number 2 in green and number 3 in red are actually exactly the same. Because when you have a method call and there's no explicit receiver, the implicit receiver is always self. Good enough? Questions?
So 2 and 3 in both, right?
3 what?
2 and 3 are both right.
2 and 3 will both work. 1 will not work. And therefore, the 4th choice is clearly wrong. So the answer is number 1.